She went tonight. That's
Okay, I started it. You're on.
Okay. Welcome to the March meeting of the Citizen Involvement Council. Our membership is comprised of 2 representatives from each of the neighborhoods within our city. We meet the first Monday of each month to hear from the city staff and department managers regarding projects in and around our city. We're happy to have this exchange with the city and take the information received back to our individual neighborhoods so all of our citizens can be well informed. The procedure we follow for individual comments is this. Those members sitting in front of an electronic monitor will alert Katie Riggs electronically when they want to speak. Those members who are not sitting in front of a screen will tip their place card, and Katie will add them to the queue in the order that they express interest. As guests, we invite you to join the discussion too. In order to join the queue, please fill out the request, which is in the back of the room on the table, to speak, and you'll find and hand it to Katie. It's as simple as that. All contributors to the discussion are allowed 3 minutes, and after that we need to give someone else a chance. It's our desire to hear from everyone who wants to contribute to the discussion, members and guests alike. Once we've completed our roll call, our guests will be given the opportunity to address themselves for the record. So let's get started. Amy Wilhite will now take the roll.
Tony Uzlabunam. Michael Burnham.
Here.
Berman. Sorry, Mike. Paul Edgar.
Here.
Kathy Hogan.
Here.
Tom O'Brien.
Here.
Joyce Gifford.
Here.
Faith Leith.
Here.
Alice Watts.
Here.
Damon Mabey. Bob LaSalle.
Here.
Barbara Rankin.
Here.
Harris Gwynn.
Here.
Karen Morey. Mary Ann Jensen.
Here.
Ingrid Rickenbach.
Here.
Todd Last. Brian Boyce.
Here.
Kim Dye.
Okay. We have 2 presentations tonight. The first one is from TriMet regarding the Milwaukee bus service plan for 2015. Our 2 presenters are Coral Agnew and Carrie Ayers Palinuk. Palinuk, pardon me. So come forward, please. We're anxious to hear from you.
Brian, can you turn your name tag around so we can see it?
Oh, yeah. They should print. I'm used to a place where they print them on both sides for that very reason.
Yes.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Coral Agnew. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and present the 2015 service plan for our Portland-Milwaukee bus service. Carrie Palinuk-Ayers is going to be the lead discussion in this. I'm going to just give you a quick update or background on the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project. It is a 7.3-mile light rail extension extending from the existing Portland State University line down through downtown over a new river crossing into southeast Portland, and then finally into Milwaukee and Oak Grove area at Park Avenue. So we have 10 stations on that alignment, and we plan on opening up on September 12th, 2015. Mark your calendars. We hope everyone's there to join us. And so we're going to really Carrie's going to touch in on the bus service plan that we are exploring for the Portland-Milwaukee project, but we'll also touch in a little bit about the Southeast Enhancement Plan. You'll hear more about which follows on the heels of this project. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
Thanks. So while I have you all, I'd like to talk a little bit about bus service, not only for Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail, which is September of 2015, but also to tell you what we're doing right now. Just starting, as I was talking to John, just today we are adding midday frequency to our frequent service bus lines, and for Oregon City that would mean the line 33 has some extra service. So that's kind of an exciting thing that we're happy to report on. So that's March of 2014. And then for this September, we're also looking at some capacity and reliability improvements on many of our bus lines. If there's a bus line that's overcrowded or people are getting passed up, we try and take a look at that so we can maintain our system. And so about 11 bus lines will have extra trips added. And then we also do reliability improvements, and that's where we look to see, is the bus getting you to your destination on time? And if it's really not, or the ones that are the worst at getting someone there on time, we add some running time to that. So the idea is that if you look at a schedule, you'll be able to count on it. So we're doing that with about 3 different bus lines throughout this next year. We're also hoping...
Are any of those bus lines in Clackamas County?
That's a good question. Certainly, I think some of the capacity ones are. I don't think I've got the list, but I'd be happy to get those to you or to the group. That should be coming out quite soon. The reliability ones that we're looking at are the 71, and that's from southeast Portland, and it goes up to Park Rose, 122nd, and then down 60th. We'll also be looking at the line 20, I believe, and I can't tell you the third one, but like I said, I can get you that information. Additionally, throughout this next year, we're hoping to keep on improving the frequent service network. That's the top priority of our general manager. So we're hoping that there'll be more good news about that in the coming year as well. So getting on to September of 2015 for the Portland-Milwaukee opening, that's what we're looking at right now. We're here talking to many different groups, Oregon City all the way up into downtown Portland. We're here to listen to what you have to say. We're going to be doing that through this first quarter of the year. And then at the end of that, or sometime this spring, we're hoping to have a first draft of a proposal from some of the things that we've heard people talk to us about. After that, we're going to listen and see if people are liking our proposal. If they have some other ideas that they want us to consider, we'll have a second draft that comes out in the summer. We'll again listen to input from folks such as yourself, writers, businesses, anybody along the alignment that wants to talk to us. And then at the end of the year, we should have a final plan for what we're going to be doing in September of 2015. Now, one of the things that that we're hearing is, can we add service? Can we put service here or there? Lots of different places. People have a lot of good ideas. And this particular process with Portland-Milwaukee probably is not going to be able to answer all the questions or get all the transit service that you would like in Clackamas County and in Oregon City. But that's where the Southeast Service Enhancement Plan will come in. And that's a longer-term vision of what people would like to see for transit in the area. So don't be discouraged if you don't see what you want with the Portland-Milwaukee plan, but just realize that there's a process that's going to be happening, probably really starting up in summer of this year. That will be a process of a lot of public involvement for that. Okay. So let's talk just a little bit about the Orange Line. There'll be 10 new stations between Park Avenue and downtown Portland. One of the things that we've heard is, well, you're going to dump me off at the south part of downtown. That's not the case. The Orange Line will travel between Park Avenue and downtown Portland, but it will go all up and down the mall, all the way to Union Station, potentially going across the Steel Bridge and then up to Expo. I think that's still, they're still looking at whether they want to do that, but it certainly will go at least all the way up to Union Station at the north end of the mall. 2 new park and rides, one at Tacoma and one at Park Avenue. Quite a few parking spaces, over 700. There'll also be bike parking at the park and rides as well.
Can we ask questions as you go? Sure. So if you catch the bus at the college and you go in, would you switch to this line or stay on the bus? Are your buses going to end at Park?
Well, and I'll be happy to answer that, but I think going through this, we'll answer that
okay.
for right now anyway. Like Coral said, it opens in September of 2015. The MAX line will run about every 15 minutes during most of the day. It'll run about every 10 minutes during the peak hours. So like we said, new MAX service and reconfigured bus service for September.
Is any of this on your website?
Yeah.
So you can go to your website.
You can go to trimet.org/PM, and it'll bring you up to the bus service planning.
Thank you.
I can also possibly email out this presentation afterwards if you guys are comfortable with that.
Yeah, because I don't think the presentation is,
Oh, no.
is
but the-
online.
The information.
I noticed on your map there that you told us there are 10 stations. I count 11 plus a future station, plus you're telling us it's going on to Union Terminal, which would indicate that there are probably already 12 stations planned. And
So the very furthest south that it calls PSU South, Southwest 5th and Jackson, that one is already open, so that's not new with the Portland Milwaukee
All right.
rail.
so where's the extra one in here? 10
Herald.
versus 11.
Future.
The Herald station would be a future station.
I understand that.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Not counting Herald.
And one of those is
No,
already
10.
there.
Yeah, no, it's the one that's already there. The PSU Southwest 5th and Jackson that
Okay.
circle, that one's already in place right now.
So that's already in place, and the
Right.
one at Union Terminal is already in place. So there will be total 13 stops.
Oh, no.
12
So
stops.
Lincoln, Moody, Waterfront, OMSI, Clinton, 17th and Rhine, 17th and Holgate, Bybee, Tacoma, downtown Milwaukee, and Park.
I fully understand that. What I do not understand is it's going down the mall, you said, to
Those are not-
Union Station. And I do not see that on your map that you're showing us here.
Yeah, this is a map that showed the new ones or the ones that are projected to be there. And I think this map was done prior to opening in 2012, the PSU South. We just didn't show all the stops along the mall.
Thank you.
Perhaps we could hold some of our questions to the end. Maybe she'll answer the ones that you have before we get there.
So while we're doing this initial listening phase, we have two basic assumptions that we're starting with. And one of those is that all the McLaughlin buses would stop in Milwaukee. So that would be the 31, the 32, the 33, and the 99. The assumption is that those would go to Milwaukee and then turn around and come back south. That's the first assumption. And the second one is that all the buses that cross the Ross Island Bridge currently, the 9, the 17, and the 19, would use the new transit bridge rather than the Ross Island Bridge. And so what I wanted to also show, I'm not sure I know how to get there.
That one, yeah, great.
So I wanted to just maybe go over, just kind of briefly, the bus lines, just to make sure we're all on the same page. The bus lines that are in the corridor, the Portland-Milwaukee corridor, and for those of you that can see, and don't look up here otherwise, the 9, the 17, and the 19, they all come from southeast Portland, across the Ross Island Bridge currently. The 28, the 29 are in Milwaukee. They're kind of local service within Milwaukee. The 152 is also some more local service in Milwaukee. The 32, as you probably know, comes from Oregon City, up Oatfield, the 33 on McLaughlin, the 34 on River Road, and the 99 on McLaughlin. Also, the 35 and the 36 and the 43 are bus lines on the west side of the river that we are considering being in the corridor of Portland-Milwaukee, as well as the 70, which goes between Milwaukee and like the Lloyd Center and then goes up north, and the 75, which goes from Milwaukee up Chavez, and then all the way over to St. John's. So all of those are in the corridor, and we'll be looking at them. We don't have assumptions about them. We don't plan to cut any lines, and the only changes that we are assuming are those that I talked about already. So let me just show you a quick picture of what that assumption looks like. So the 9, 17, and 19 would go across the new bridge. And then the 30s would stop in Milwaukee. And then people can get a connection to light rail either at Park or in downtown Milwaukee. So I wanted to show you just the service that we have in Oregon City, so everybody's on the same page. City Hall. So if you have any questions, most of it, or a lot of it, comes from Clackamas Community College through town and then up into Portland. Now, some of the things that we've heard, though, as we've been doing this since the first of the year, is, are you going to continue to have service on McLaughlin north of Milwaukee? Are you going to have service to the Tacoma Park and Ride? Are you going to have service across the Selwood Bridge? If you're going to put everything across the Ross Island, not on the Ross Island Bridge, but the new bridge, what about the people in inner southwest Portland that will no longer have service? So those are the things that we're hearing. We're having to deal with those. We're having to, see how important those are to everyone. And that's why we're here, to listen to what you guys have to say as well. So that's my presentation. And so if you have any other questions or any comments, we would be happy to hear what they are.
Okay. Let's see if we can. There we are. Kathy?
Yes. Do you have any intentions, anytime, anywhere in this time frame of life, to put a bus back on South End Road?
So, like I mentioned earlier, this process is, for the most part, looking at the lines that I've talked about. But again, don't think that TriMet's going to leave and never come back, because really, starting this summer, we will be out here with the Southeast Enhancement Plan talking about what your vision is for Clackamas County and Oregon City.
Well, actually, I know for a fact that 2 handicapped people were left out of probably getting to work to the Goodwill because you stopped picking them up in the special bus. So it's not. And I know somebody that was going to be at our neighborhood meeting when you come, because she would like to not have to drive to West Lynn to get a bus. She'd rather be able to get on South End like she did before, and you had 2, 3 other people were disconnected the minute you stopped that, and it's been probably 6 years. There hasn't been a bus.
Yeah, it's been a few years, yes.
So I mean, it's important that they're going to cram them and jam them at 2,500 square foot lots down the line. They need that stability to get it started, and maybe even get more people that would take a bus.
Tom?
I just have a real simple question. How many lines does TriMet operate in total?
79.
79 lines?
Bus lines.
Bus lines.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Paul?
On a positive note, I saw the bridge across the Willamette joined, and it sure looks like it from the.
No,
It's not?
very
Really
close.
close.
Very
close.
It will actually, the west side will be closing by the end of this week, and the east side of the embankment will be closing by the end of the month, and then the middle point should be closing in the end of May.
Well,
Very close.
Whenever we drilled tunnels and the tunnels came together, there were celebrations. And you have an opportunity, and it's positive PR, because looks like it's going to be a very beautiful bridge.
Bob?
I heard you say, I think, that you're increasing the service on line 33.
I said that the assumption is that the line 30, for March.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Okay,
did.
I thought that was the line that goes up Holcomb Boulevard, but according to your map, that's 34.
Goes to the college.
Yeah, it goes to
Oh,
the college.
okay. Have you been in touch yet with the Clackamas County Housing Authority to talk to them about that line that goes to that low-income housing?
The 32, or the 34, I mean.
34.
No, we have not yet, but we got your, you mentioned that, I think, last time we were here, and that was a good thing, but we haven't done it yet, but we will.
Okay, well, I told them I'd hold your feet to the fire, so.
Yeah, that's great.
Michael?
Did you say that the 33 would stop at Milwaukee? That pretty much the buses, it's a transfer situation for riders that.
That is the assumption right now, yes.
And no more. There would not be any expresses from Oregon City.
The 99 would stop in Milwaukee as well.
Yeah. Well, just a voice, but I think it would be sorely missed, and I'm not as much of a rider as I have been, but I've been a pretty avid rider from on the east side and north, and number 8s, 72, 75s, 22s. I've been on a lot of buses, and it's nice. I mean, can't ask for everything, but the direct routes are kind of nice. Max is a different experience than the bus is.
Kathy?
Excuse me, I had forgotten one question. At these 2 new park and rides, is there going to be cameras for when people break in the cars? Or are there going to be guards?
There will be cameras at each one of the park and rides at very specific locations to try to capture as much of the parking spaces as possible. In addition to that, there'll be lighting and enhancement to the areas, so that way we use what we call SEPTED principles in order to build new projects, and those principles are to deter people from committing bad things.
John?
Can you, I got a couple things, but can you go over the timing again, the time it takes to get from the South Station on the train to get to Portland? So that'd be helpful. And then the other thing, I was just, 35 line, the way it's shown on the map is not, it doesn't come across the Oregon City West Line
No, it
Bridge.
doesn't come across
So
the bridge.
it'd be good to change that.
That
just
would be
because
good.
I think
Thanks.
that,
You're
and then on the 35 line, given the fact that there's this potential for buses that typically took McLaughlin Boulevard and then went all the way into Portland, that now they'd be stopping short and people would have to get off and change. Is the 35 line an option for increase between Oregon City and maybe even having it go as far as the community college? So, maybe that route would be kind of fill that need, and it would be a direct route to Portland as opposed to using what's been direct before, only it's on the McLaughlin Boulevard alignment.
I hadn't heard that yet. We can look at that as well. Yeah. It's not been one of the assumptions, but it's certainly something we could explore.
I think what I hear is the concern for having to get off and on a bus and have transfer, challenges. And so if that's really it, if you can get from somewhere in Oregon City, well, preferably if it went all the way to the community college, kind of like the 33 line does, except for once it got to 205, it would go to Lake West Lynn and Lake Oswego. Seems like a pretty good route. I don't know what the timing difference would be. Seems like McLaughlin moves a lot quicker than 43, but I don't know. Could be an option.
Yeah, and I don't know the timing either between if you were starting in Oregon City and if you took the 35 as opposed to the 33. I'm not sure about that. But were you asking also about the time it takes light rail?
Yeah. So comparative between what a bus might take.
An express bus all the way.
So we have an estimated rail time from Park Avenue of 21 minutes to get to PSU, so the south part of downtown, 21 minutes. And and I don't have the schedule with me, but I have looked, and it's about the same as with the 99. They're very comparable times. Now, having said that, what rail is going to bring, though, is a lot more reliability and knowing exactly what's going on and how long it's going to take you to get to downtown, because it gets to go. It doesn't have to stop in the traffic of McLaughlin. So particularly during peak hours, inbound in the morning and out to here in the afternoon, the time should be much more reliable and known than the buses, because they get caught in the traffic that no one can quite say exactly what it's going to be. But the bus and the train times, from what I've seen, are pretty comparable.
Joyce?
So I'm back over here. So if you took the train to downtown, you said Union Station, and at that point you could transfer to another train to get out to the Expo Center or to the airport?
Yeah, absolutely. You can transfer along the mall. You can transfer right in the heart of the city to the red or the blue line. There is a possibility that the orange line that's going to start in Milwaukee or Park Avenue will go across the Steel Bridge and go up to Expo. It'll be through routed, it's called, so it changes from orange to yellow as it's going through town. That's a possibility. It's a possibility. We haven't determined that just yet, though. But absolutely, you can make a good connection right in downtown Portland.
Okay, thank you.
Faith?
No, that's all right. My question got answered.
Oh, good. Okay. Kathy again?
Sorry, John mentioned trains, and that is one thing I can complain about. It would be nice. People using the train station, they don't all take their cars like us. The taxi is reliable in the morning, but don't count on it at 6:30 at night. They will not come for you. We sat 3 hours. It would be nice if the bus could go by the train station.
The Oregon City train
Yeah,
station.
the Oregon City train station.
Oh.
So that people could at least get up on the hill towards their homes. I could at least walk a mile or two, but I'm not going to walk all the way down there up there. That's more than a mile or two. But it would be nice to find out what, and the ridership, that if they had a bus, maybe they would even quit using their cars.
That's the whole point.
Paul?
Just as this gets circulated more, Lynn Avenue is not spelled with a Y, it's an I. So as you circulate this around more, it would be better to have it accurate.
Thank you.
And Tom?
Yes, I was surprised at your statement regarding reliability of trains or MAX service being superior to buses, yet on a repeated basis, we find that the MAX lines aren't working and we have needs to bring in buses to haul the passengers. How does that figure into your reliability statements?
When I'm talking about reliability, I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, there are times that the train breaks down, and then we have to get buses to move people. But I think on a day-to-day basis, my point is it doesn't get stuck in traffic. It goes on its own right of way.
Well, if we're talking traffic, that's one thing. But if we're talking the ability to reroute around
Absolutely.
a disaster or a problem, the buses have far superiority to any fixed rail system.
And I'm not gonna
Amtrak
dispute
also
that,
has
yeah.
had to repeatedly shut down their West Coast service and bus people from Portland to Seattle, et cetera. So there's a trade-off in there, and I don't think we should, really be misleading people with a reliability statement.
I missed something earlier when we had our roll call. I promised the guests they'd have an opportunity to introduce themselves, and maybe one of them has a question that they might like to ask our presenters. We've got one lady and two gents back there, I believe, that are guests tonight. Could you introduce yourselves for the record?
Hold on.
My name is Timothy Christopher.
Hi, my name's Eric Geddes from the Barkley Hills neighborhood.
Thank you.
Linda Basinger from the Kanema neighborhood.
Thank you very much. it appears that our members have satisfied their questions. Do any of our guests have anything they'd like to add or question to our presenters from TriMet? Anything? Okay. Carrie and Carol, thank you so much.
So
Coral.
I am
Coral.
going to leave. I took the comments and questions that you gave tonight, and I'll be referring with Katie to make sure that I've captured the questions that you have correctly and accurately. If for any reason that you think of a question when we're not here, I'm going to leave these comment cards for you, as well as the opportunity. Tomorrow night we'll be back here in Oregon City, just a few blocks away, for an open house. Invite your neighbors, please come out. And it'll be from 6 o'clock to 7:30 at the Pioneer Community Center, again, right down the street. And so we'll be here again tomorrow to talk to your neighbors and your friends. So send them our directions if they have any questions. I'm going to leave these here with you, as well as the comment cards. And feel free and check our websites if you want to at trimet.org/PM, and that gives you all the information about our bus service.
Coral, will your presentation tomorrow be the same as this one, or we have maps on the wall? And
There will be maps on tables to look at. There'll be other staff resources on site as well, and it'll be the same presentation we gave you tonight.
Okay.
How long has that been scheduled?
About a month.
Quite a while.
Yeah.
It's been.
Why are we learning about it just now?
It's been on our website for over a month. It's on the front page, homepage.
It's hard to get the neighbors out on such short notice.
It would have been nice if we could have gotten an
The,
email.
the really nice thing as well is this is the first part of the process, and so the open web information is available past our open houses as well, and then we'll be coming back out to talk to you and your neighbors at the end of spring, early summer.
Okay.
And so this is the first part of our process, and we're hoping.
So if they can't make
Yeah.
tomorrow night's meeting, they can go on your website and
Correct.
we
And-
can take these little cards back to our neighborhoods and have the neighbors fill them out
You sure can.
if they have concerns. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, ladies. That was
Thank
very
you.
nice. Oh, here it is. Okay, our next presentation is an update on the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. Tony Conkle is here to share the latest and greatest new and improved information.
Tony. Did he take you on that walk? Yeah. You got good weather.
All right, well, thank you. My name is Tony Conkle. I'm the Community Development Director for Oregon City. We're bringing this back to provide an update on where we're at in the Willamette Falls Legacy Project in terms of the land use document that's being prepared for submittal. And then I think probably most of you have either been on the site. I know I've been in front of you before. I'm going to go through most of this pretty quickly to get more towards the end where we get into the demonstration plans, explain what those are, and then explain really there's two products that are being created. One is the land use document and the other is the strategic plan, and kind of explain a little bit of those differences and what some of the initial findings of that are as we begin to have those discussions with our other partners and their elected officials. Just some pictures of the falls. We were able to have some additional photos taken, the one that you saw previous to this one as well as this one from the water, just providing some perspective of the resource that is out there. Another picture of the site looking from the south to the north of the lagoon. This was some of our public involvement when we kicked it off this summer. And another one of our public involvement events at the Moot, where we broke into small groups to have discussions about what folks would like to see on the site and where things should be located. When we talk about the opportunities for cultural and historical interpretation on the property and the authenticity of the site, you know, what our Walker Macy has really been focusing on are what are some of the architectural features that are there. You have the Horton Sphere, just tells an amazing story, but it's also very interesting to look at, and how can that be incorporated into the site. In the bottom left, you have one of the cornices for the D-Ink and paper machine number 4. So you just have this very unique style that exists on the property. You're all probably very familiar with the 4 core values that we've been working around: public access, historical and cultural interpretation, healthy habitats, and economic redevelopment. And this is what we've heard as we've been out, and we've broken this down, and I'll walk through each one of these individually through all the public engagement. Obviously, everyone understands the significance of this property, dating back to the floods that created the falls, a very important spot for the Native American tribes of the region. This was originally ceded from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. It was a cultural, trading, fishing, hunting area. And it does have that significance. And so what are the opportunities to incorporate that back into the site? Here's a picture of the property. You can see the steamboats pulled up, the Oregon City Woolen Mill, of which the foundation's still on the site, which many of you have seen. The tail races coming out. And what we really like about this picture, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the healthy habitats, is just when you're out there now, as industrialization has happened, we've really straightened out the river. With the adding structures into the waterway itself. And what you see here is what that roughened edge was. And that's really one of the opportunities that we have, is roughening that edge again, which will provide a resting area for salmon as they are returning back up the river. A picture of the D-Inc building with the cars on the street and the sidewalks and how it did function as a main street. And if you can pull off the additions that have been made throughout the years, this building is still under there. This is the inside of paper machine number 4 while the paper machine was still in there. And one of the things we really realized was just the vastness and the volume of this building and paper machine 4 was their largest paper machine on the site. Once that was removed, it just reveals this space that has a lot of opportunities in there, whether it's keeping it for a large volume or starting to break that up with the floor plates and installing them back in there. So this is why this is one of the buildings that we have been focusing on. Many of you have seen the Woolen Mill dating back to the mid-1870s. And the properties, the buildings in orange here, so we've identified the D-Inc building and paper machine 4, which would be on Main Street. The red outline is the Woolen Mill Foundation, and then adjacent to that is Mill O, which is the wooden structure, 3-story structure that extends out to the river. And then we have the Hawley building at the very southern end of the tip along the PGE Dam. Not to say that there aren't other interesting buildings on the site, whether it be the boilers or paper machine number 1, the digester buildings or the Oregon City Flour Mill, which foundation is still underneath paper machine number 2. Talked a little bit earlier about the importance to the Native Americans. This is a picture of the lamprey harvest that happens every summer by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And we've also, as part of this, have been looking at what are other examples throughout the state, the country, and the world where they take these industrial sites and they incorporate in some of the existing buildings. So in this picture, you can see in the top right, you have the old building, but you have this new elevator shaft and covering off it. So it's incorporating both the new with the old and trying to redevelop the site, keeping that authenticity and doing it in such a way that the architecture doesn't compete with the building but complements it. Public access, this was by far one of the 4 values of which we had almost, I think it was 88% supporting public access along the river and out to the falls. And this is what it used to be. This was our downtown. You had homes, you had businesses, you had public access. Blue Heron, obviously, as when it was Publishers. You can see on the sign they used to run mill tours through there. This was right at the end of Main Street, and so it was a significant not only employer and economic driver for the area, but it was the gateway, the end of our downtown. It was very significant and was a very big part of what happened around Oregon City and Clackamas County. This is the plat of downtown, and so we've put the red outline as the site overlaid on the plat. So you have the old Water Street, which is roughly 99E. You had Main Street coming into the property. You had 4th Street, 3rd Street, and you actually had Water Street extending along the property as well. And when we look at the property, obviously there are limitations. You have 99E, a bluff, the Union Pacific line on one side. You obviously have the river on the other side. Very limited ability to provide vehicular access going south. So it's really focusing on how can you how can we safely get folks into this property from the existing Main Street and 99E? Here's the intersection of 99E and Main Street, looking back west towards the river. And we've had several discussions with Oregon Department of Transportation. DKS is our consultant team working on the transportation component, and so we continue to negotiate with ODOT on what is the best transportation improvements to provide safe access into this property, make sure that we can not only get vehicles in there, but also the pedestrian. And so what you're looking at here is one of the proposals. We looked at, I believe there were about 28 or 29 scenarios ranging from flyovers to what you see here and a multitude of combinations of that to try and find what makes sense, but what also makes sense from an economic standpoint that can be accomplished on this site. And what we find is that a majority of your trips coming to this site are going to be coming from the north and down into the site. And so what this is doing is adding a light at 6th Street, reestablishing Water Street, which would be allowed as a right in, right out to get into the property, which would provide a second access in, and it would alleviate some of the pressure at the light at Main Street and 99, which would be a full movement, where essentially you'd have a left, right, and a straight from that one. And as you're coming northbound, up 99, you'd come through the tunnel and you'd utilize existing Railroad Avenue. Right now it's utilized. It's not very well marked. It's not very well signed. If you're not familiar with it, it comes up and you miss it pretty quick. And so, what are those opportunities to make sure that we utilize that, which will help alleviate by eliminating, essentially it's kind of like the jug handle, trying to eliminate the left turn. You have a sight distance issue as you're coming northbound through the tunnel, a queuing issue. So this would be a remedy to get folks off of 99 safely by making the right and then being able to come and access the property straight through. This is where Water Street was. So this is just west of the water filtration plant, between the water filtration plant and the river, and just south of the parking lot that's right adjacent to 99E. And so this is what it could potentially look like as you try to reestablish that water avenue plus the pedestrian access along the river continuing south into the site. So not only is it important to reestablish that original grid, what that does is connects Main Street through 4th and 3rd back to Water Street and back to the river, open up those right-of-ways again. But then also what you see in orange it would be the pedestrian access. So how can you get folks from 99E out to the falls and then down the Kenema Spur? And then what are the opportunities to tie into the McLaughlin Promenade? And then what you see in yellow are kind of some of the interesting features along there. You have the Oregon City Boat Club dock. You have some Old Dolphin from where they would bring up the barges. You have the water the large cement structure that stored the stormwater building as you continue to work south down the property all the way out to what we refer to as the dance floor at the very end of the PGE facility. And so how can those be interconnected in all of the scenarios for development on the property? Here's an example looking back north of what potentially could happen, where you have more of a formal pathway up on the top and then a more informal one along the bottom, which gets you out closer to the river into some of those viewing stations and those opportunities to bring folks closer to the river while providing public access along the site. The area marked in yellow is what we refer to as the dance floor. So this is on the PG property. We continue to have very productive meetings with Portland General Electric. I think I've probably let you know before that they are supportive of providing public access and education, provided we can do it in a way that's safe and that they can maintain the property as they need to, the dam structure as they need to. And so we currently have we've had several versions of a public access easement go back and forth between the partners and PGE, and we're hoping to finalize that relatively soon. Here's the existing condition of the dam facility, and here's what it could potentially look like, providing safe public access along there while maintaining the ability for PGE to get in there and maintain their facility. Here'd be a picture kind of from the end of the dam to the south looking back to the north. This is the Mill D, so this is kind of out on the little peninsula by the intake lagoon. And what this is really showing is that there are opportunities. We are providing a framework plan which will allow certainty for us to do the zone change, but allow some flexibility because we don't exactly know who the end user is and what they may be bringing to the site. So what this is showing is that maybe there's a way to reuse the existing buildings on the site, or maybe only part of them, or you take them all out and you end up with a park at the very end. So these are things that are going to continue to be refined as we move forward throughout the years. Once again, just identifying the public access down the rail spur that's about a quarter mile from the site, that's included in the site till it connects with the UP main line down just north of Kenema. This upper area, much different than the lower area, much more calm, much more still. But then one of the opportunities would be to take this rail spur, and essentially it'd be like a Rails to Trails if you've seen those projects, where you could provide that bike and ped access along the river, but then also provide some habitat restoration for an area that's really overgrown with quite a bit of invasives right along the river shoreline. Obviously, the flooding events that occur out there, what's really interesting in this picture, and it's really great for folks to go out to, is the building right across with the windows. And if you look at it, you see the top window and then about half of the next window. So just remember that the next time you're on 99 or you have a look at the site, just to give you some idea of how high that actually was, because it really is pretty mind-blowing, honestly, every time you look over there. And so what we show here is just building on that initial plan. And then the blue is what I've identified as the 96 flood inundation area, and it's essentially what's becoming where we're identifying probably the most appropriate public access and open space on the property. Some of you may recognize this. This is underneath the boilers, so this is really close to the south end of the property, and this is one of the tail races coming out of what would have been paper machine number 1. And we look to other examples, and a really great one is Mill Ruins in Minneapolis, where they took the old flour mill and the industrialization of the site and incorporated it into the public open space. It makes for a very interesting place. It provides a great educational opportunity in a very wonderful open space. And the economic impact of this investment was huge for the city of Minneapolis. Obviously a different scale, a much larger metropolitan area, but billions of dollars of private investment around this, which was primarily an industrial area, and around this public open space, which the mill itself, the Guthrie Theater, moved into and reclaimed the old flour mill there and really became an anchor for this redeveloped part of the city. This is another pretty neat example in Australia of an oil refinery and loading area. And they took that and provided public access and took out the industrial use of the site. But what's neat about it is you still see some of that industrial heritage on the site. If you look at some of the green grass areas, there are actually outlines of the old tanks that were on the site. And you have the walls that are still incorporated in the public access on the property. Healthy habitat. And so when we look at this property, I talked a little bit about that earlier picture of roughening the edge. At first we were like, oh, let's reestablish one of these tail races and we'll put a bunch of water through and maybe the salmon will come up through the site. And that didn't go over very well with the state or the feds. And they really wanted us to continue to make sure that fish would get to the existing fish ladders because they are functioning. And so when we did those discussions, what opportunities were there? And really it was providing a roughening of that edge so that as migrating fish are coming back up, they have areas to go and rest, which they've lost with the straightening of that river. We also look at ability to keep water flows moving out of the lagoon, returning water back out of the lagoon into the tail races, reestablishing the rocky habitat out by the clarifier, whether that be through the clarifier remaining and we focus on what's there, or the clarifier comes out and we reestablish that area. And then reestablishing that vegetation along the river bank, both above and below the falls. Economic redevelopment. When we look at the property, we've by reestablishing Main Street, Water Street, 4th and 3rd, you reestablish that existing grid on the property, which does lend itself to redevelopment of block sizes that are appropriate for the type of development we want to see on the property. roughly 22 acres. And when you look at blocks 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are highlighted in yellow, so those are completely outside of the floodplain, the 96 inundation, you have approximately 6 net acres, which is equivalent to these 4.5 blocks in downtown. So it is a significant amount of property that would be coming back into development. And then when you look at the other properties, so you have blocks 3 and 4, and number 9. So number 9 was out on the end there where we kind of looked at those alternatives, 3 alternatives, whether it be a park or just redeveloping the existing building. And you include those in, it's about 5.5 acres net once you pull out right of way. And really what we're trying to show here is that on those fringes, so you have the Woolen Mill Foundation above lot number 3. You have Mill O adjacent to lot number 3. You kind of have this area of transition from development to open space. And on that transition area, maybe it's open space, maybe it's some type of development. I think that's going to be something that we work on. But we identify it as a potential and a decision that needs to be made. We were very conscious of the existing views from the promenade and maintaining those. And when you look at the existing heights on the property, they actually fit very well with what we are hoping to see on the property in terms of the multi-story type of development. And when you look at the makeup of this property, because of the basalt that exists there, realistically you're looking at parking that's in the building rather than underground. It'd be very expensive. Underground parking is expensive as it is, but then to try and blast through quite a bit of basalt to provide that. So with the block system the way it is and the lots that are created, they do lend themselves to what you see here, parking, whether it be behind the buildings, which would serve as a buffer from the UP main line, or putting it on the second story above the retail, which is a very normal type of development to park cars. And our goal was to make sure that we could park the site on the lots that are there, meaning you build an office building with retail on the bottom, you do have the ability to park that on the property within the tax lot. And so this is essentially the framework plan. So this is what's going to be submitted as part of the land use document. It's establishing the blocks, it's establishing the right-of-way locations and the pedestrian access and where it needs to get to from 99 out to PGE and then down the trail towards Kenema. The yellow sections, as we discussed, were really the ones that were outside. The green area would be the 96 inundation, open space, public access area. And then you have the hatched areas where you have Mill O, potentially a building that could be reused, but that it needs further study. You have the Woolen Mill Foundation. How can that be incorporated in the site? And then lot number 9 at the end still needs to be looked at a little bit more carefully before we know what can happen there. And these are demonstration plans. And so these are non-binding. These are not part of the land use application. They'll go into the strategy document to provide, a record of what we were thinking when we did this, because this could take quite a long time before this is fully built out. And demonstration plan A is really what we would consider the one where it takes out the most of the infrastructure in the property in the open space area. So really you have the pedestrian connection is shown in each one of these plans to show how that can be accommodated through the open space. But in this one, you're really taking out all the fill and mill, the boilers, paper machine number 1, and reestablishing that natural shoreline and the tail races around the property. And this would be an example of what that open space could look like. Mill O to your left, the Woolen Mill Foundation behind you, reestablishing that very natural edge on the property. The second one is a little bit more urbanized. It leaves more of the industrial infrastructure on the property, much more formalized open space. And then the third plan is building on that as well. It's really showing that there's multiple opportunities for how this site can be redeveloped on the open space and public access part while maintaining your existing blocks for redevelopment and investment. Good examples right here locally in Portland, the Brewery Box, where they were adding on modern, newer buildings to existing historical buildings. And so it just shows you how very good architecture can complement what's there that you're trying to preserve. And so here's an example of paper machine number 4 and what those opportunities could present themselves if you were able to reuse, whether it be the facade, put a new building inside of it, reuse the building as it is. I think there's a lot of ways that the resource could be utilized moving forward. And here's what I really wanted to get to is when we start talking about the strategy document and what the opportunities are, what our team has been putting together is an implementation plan, and it's focusing on transformative action that can be taken, contingent relationships that need to be made and kept, and then the hardest one is probably patience. And when we look at this and why these are really key is that, you know, this is a constrained industrial site. It's a big site. It's 23 acres. It has a lot of difficulties associated with it that are, you know, proving to be hard to get your head around, especially for the private side. We've seen a couple folks come and go already trying to get a handle on the due diligence and the costs associated with it are going to take time. The location in Oregon City. We think that obviously the falls are of state, if not national significance. This amazing opportunity. But what we're finding is that the rents and the property values are not going to support the type of development that I think we're all envisioning for the redevelopment of this property. So that is, you know, where these relationships that we need to form come in. And, you know, that is one of the challenges on the property. And so how do you overcome that? How do you make sure that what does develop on that property is what we want to see and that it will be successful? And so what are the opportunities to make that happen? And what we really start to look at, and, you know, these are just pictures of just the difficulty. You know, this was paper machine number 4, trying to get all that stuff that's been added to this building off of there and redevelop that takes time, takes the patience. And when we talk about the transformative action, one of them is that we've identified as providing the public access. How can you really change what's happening on this property? And one of those ways is to get the public access onto the property, do a world-class public access amenity that draws people to the property, we believe will transform not only the existing downtown, I mean the immediate impact of drawing in visitors to the property, but it will also change what that property is worth just because of that investment and what it brings to the property. And we really consider this kind of on this continuum of action. And you have public benefit. It should be done because it's a public benefit and it justifies it in and of itself, all the way across to private investment, which is without public investment, essentially. It is the private side bringing the money and the development and the uses to the property. And how do those all work together? And how can we as a partnership position ourselves to make sure that we're ready as we continue on developing this property? And, you know, I think one of the discussion points is public access. We heard overwhelming support to provide it along the river, through the site, and to the falls. And so the question is, does that, providing that amenity to the citizens of Oregon City, the county, and the state, is that worthy of a public investment regardless of what happens? And the next one would be open space and amenities, places for people, focus of the site, sense of place. You know, this is very important, but it does need to be integrated into what's going to happen on the private side. You want them to support one another and really be seamlessly. When you leave the private realm to the public realm, you want them to work together. You don't want to go in and have something that's out of context with what's built around it. Public infrastructure, when we start talking about providing water, sewer, electricity, transportation, you know, those are all things that are going to come, but they're going to be closer to when the private development's ready to happen rather than up front. And then obviously you have the private development, which is the parking, the mix of uses, the investment in the vertical costs associated with the property. And so you take all these together, and so what are things that we can do as a partnership to prepare for that? One of the opportunities would be to fund and build now the public access. As I discussed earlier, you know, there's a discussion about, is that worthy investment in and of itself? But even if you do that, there are immediate impacts. As I stated, there will be immediate economic benefits with jobs. There'll be immediate economic benefits with the existing businesses downtown from the tourists that it will draw. Then you start looking at the open space amenities. And this is really trying to identify how do you fund this and how do you coordinate this action so that you're ready to go. This is really probably a public investment again, coordinating with the private side to make sure that what we're building it works with what is being proposed. Then you get into the public infrastructure. Once again, how do you fund this? What are going to be the costs of bringing in that infrastructure to the property? But really, this is contingent upon private money coming to the table. Once the private side is ready to go, whether it be bringing sewer in, water in, we have identified a plan to accomplish that. And then the contingent action is waiting for the private side. That's the patient part. Bold actions are required to transform this site, we believe. Early investment in public access is critical. Secure funding commitments are necessary for public open space and infrastructure. So making sure that we're ready when the private side comes instead of the other way around. Funding commitments require strong public-public partnerships. I think we've been pretty successful to date of having a very strong public-public partnership with multiple agencies, with Clackamas County, with the state through the governor's office, and with Metro. I think it's been one of the drivers that has gotten us to the point we are today. And so how do we maintain that? It's really important that we have this strong public-public partnership. It makes it easier to go get funding. It makes it easier to show folks that we're all on the same page. If you can bring City of Oregon City, Clackamas County, Metro, and the governor's office all saying we want this exact same thing, it's a lot easier to get things accomplished. The public-private partnerships, it's based on we're going to bring this, you're going to bring this, and an expectation of who's going to be responsible for what and at what levels those are going to be brought. And then once again, probably the hardest one with a property and an opportunity like this is just the patience of the private side, accepting that it is a very, very difficult property to make work, to just understand, to try and figure out how do you make it work. And where we're at right now, we've completed our community engagement, and we're in the process of finalizing the land use document for submittal. And once we have that submitted, we are shooting for April 21st for our first Planning Commission meeting. We expect probably 2 or 3 Planning Commission, 2 or 3 City Commission meetings along the way. So we're probably looking at July for adoption, hopefully, of the framework master plan for the property. So I talked a little bit about that timing right here. And really the land use application, I showed you the framework plan that was created, but it's really addressing the zone change criteria. We have standards for how you do a comprehensive plan amendment and a zone change, dealing with the flood hazard area, natural resource overlay district, the Willamette River Greenway. So dealing with all the regulatory requirements is what goes into the land use document. We're also proposing a new zone, Willamette Falls zone. It'll be a little sexier later, but and it's essentially taking quite a bit of the existing mixed-use downtown, but tweaking it a little bit because of some of the special characteristics of the site. We wanted to open it up to quite a range of uses, a little bit more than you see in mixed-use downtown is what we heard. If there's an opportunity for some type of manufacturing on the site that's compatible with what's there, we want to make sure we allow that. It increases the floor area ratios, which dictates how much the site needs to be utilized for building. So it really raises some of those thresholds from what we have in the existing mixed-use downtown. And then we are also proposing right now, if you come in with a application to build a building, if you meet all of our code, it goes through staff. It's a type 2 decision. We're proposing to create some type of a design review committee. And whether that be the Planning Commission or a new group, we'll work that out. But what that does is it allows us to use guidelines and principles, which are not what are called clear and objective. So right now, I have to have clear and objective standards for a building. 50% of your frontage needs to be transparent. It's very mathematical, it's very measurable, and it's really hard to get good design when you have to write clear and objective standards, which are required by state law for most situations. What we're going to do is say that, you know, the residential that we're adding to this property, which is a possibility, allowed use, is not needed housing, which allows us to not utilize clear and objective standards. We can use design committees, we can use a design review type of process. And so what that allows us to do, though, is to take these ideas and thoughts and desires that we've heard and write them more as policies, which then get reviewed by a design committee, which would be made up of architects and experts in landscape architecture, you know, supplementing our existing committee, which really does lead to better design, leads to more creativity, leads to what we believe will be better options for the property. So that'll be one big change, actually, from what we currently have in Oregon City. And then the vision strategy report is really trying to capture all these aspirations and making sure they don't get lost. This is kind of how we got to where we're at, what we want to see, and it's really almost a lobbying document. You know, when we went back to DC last about a year ago, you know, the question was, well, what's your plan? And we didn't have one yet. And so this is the beginning of that. This is saying, we've got this strategic plan. We went through this public process. We're hoping that each of the jurisdictions will adopt the plan by resolution so that we can say we have their support. And that will begin really looking at, you know, utilizing that document to justify the funds that we'll be asking for, whether that be from the state, the feds, philanthropic grants. It'll really be the base of putting all that information together. And right now, what we're proposing is to focus on the public access part of that. We've put together approximately $4 million for engineering and construction documents, and then a $30 million public access project that'll take you from 99E out to the end of the PGE dam. We are taking that to each of our partners in work sessions to begin those discussions, and simultaneously we are trying to identify funding sources for the $4 million, hoping to accomplish this in the next 3 to 5 years. But we will continue to have those discussions with our partners to see what those commitments are and what they're willing to bring to the table. It's obviously no small chunk of change to try and come up with. So that concludes my presentation. And I would just like to throw out, we got snowed out on our Keene event last month. So it is this Thursday up at Keene headquarters, 5:30 to 8 p.m. It's at 505 Northwest 13th Avenue. So if you have the opportunity to come, we'd love to have you up there.
What's the address again?
It is 505 Northwest 13th. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have one, and then Bob, I see that you're wanting to ask one too. When you speak with developers and when you try to incite interest for this, we've done so many changes on Main Street. What's the process of incorporating that? I heard in your presentation that you want the traffic to go both ways once the two are joined. So are we still working on trying to identify what's needed on Main Street so that it incorporates what we think we'll be doing in the old Blue Heron site? Specifically, I might just give you an example. For instance, if we want to have residents we've even talked about having residents on Main Street in some of the upper layers of those buildings, would we be looking at having groceries, small grocery stores, or how do we incorporate all the things that people would need if they were going to live down there and walk and get all the things that they need?
At this point, the zoning doesn't preclude it. So I think it really comes down to, you know, the framework plan was never meant to say Block 4 is going to be a 4-story building with this retail and this much resident, you know, because we just don't know what the market is going to want to do there or make work there, that can work there. So while it's certainly allowed, a grocery store, for example, there's nothing that says a grocery store has to be there. So I think in answer to your question, there's not a plan that says, you know, you need to provide a grocery store, whether it be on an existing site downtown or on this property right here. Okay. You know, either two things are going to happen. The market's going to drive it because of the residential that does come in with it, or the city is going to have to somehow proactively try to essentially get a grocer into the site. You know, market. Okay, we've got a building or we've identified a property that'd be great, and then really try to go out and get them to come.
Right.
So I think it's still, you know, the thing about groceries, they're not going to come till you have the rooftops. They're not going to be in there before. And so, it really tends to be a response to the amount of housing that's there rather than the precursor to it.
Okay. Thank you. Bob?
Do we yet have any county, state, or federal financial commitments from them? And if so, are there any time constraints?
Yes. So we have the original. So it's been in July. We secured the $5 million appropriation from the governor's office that's run through state parks. That has to be essentially we needed to a public agency needed to secure a property interest, whether that be property outright or an easement for the public access, and have a viable financial plan that the state signs off on before they'll release their $5 million. So essentially it means we need to go bring more money before they'll release their $5. And we essentially have to have that agreement into place by roughly March of 2015 in order for them to sell the bonds by the end of the biennium budget year, which would be June 30th of 15. So about a year.
Let's move forward.
Yeah, so those are the one secured funding that we have. We're beginning those conversations right now with all the other organizations and identifying funding opportunities. We're about 3 weeks into it right now.
Thank you.
Paul?
Transportation in the site still seems to be quite a problem. It's literally getting through on 99 or whatever into Oregon City and then finding a place to park. And it seems to, I would still like to think that we're going to consider moving the railroad station, the Amtrak station, back downtown, possibly incorporating it with this site, as we don't have a lot of options available. One other thing is we talk about the river and about how important the visibility of the river and the draw of water is. The old proposal that's been around for forever and ever to put a trail on top of the sewer line where I could come all the way from Clackamas Park on top of a pedestrian bike access that has immensely greater view of the water all the way into the site would be an immense draw. It would be something that would help people from Clackamas or to park someplace. I could get into it or onto it from 8th Avenue where the courthouse is and get right down underneath and get onto that trail. But that might be, again, I know it goes back to the whole idea that we're spending $4.5 million on McLaughlin Enhancement Project number 2 by McDonald's, and we're not adding any capacity and not alleviating a major roadblock or choke point at that site after $4.5 million, and knowing that we're going to have to bring 1 million visitors in a year. If we hope to make this a very successful tourist place, we got to get smarter. I'm hoping that we do get smarter. Thank you.
Tom?
Tony, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you and your committee for the outstanding leadership job you've done. This just is amazing, the amount of work that you've put into this and what you've been able to accomplish so far. I do have one perhaps suggestion. Consider naming rights to the falls.
We were just joking about that the other day.
Were you thinking Safeco Falls?
Safeco Falls.
I could see it.
The
Allen Falls.
Providence Park. I mean, it's like,
I think the Allen Falls just.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yes, it's probably. I'll even go look in the cushion seats myself up there.
Michael?
I think when I look over at West Lynn and I see the mill, I might be the minority, but I get jealous. And I get jealous because that's an industrial site that's working and bringing a lot of money to the tax base. I know when the mill was running in the mid-'90s, It brought over $17 million into the economy. It paid over $500,000 to the city in taxes, and provided a lot of family wage jobs, real family wage jobs that retail cannot possibly do. And for over 150 years, whether it was textiles or paper or food products, it produced something. And I don't know how in the last maybe 20 years we decided that that's not a good idea, that over 150 years of history and legacy and good ideas and income to an economy to our city, that it nearly defined our city, how all of a sudden mixed-use retail is the way to go. We have heavy rail that come in there. We have heavy electricity, heavy infrastructure, and a lot of those buildings are obviously a challenge to reinterpret. And not to say that the green space is long overdue and public access is extremely important. But we've got to add industry where we take industry away. It's just part of our city, a balanced economy in our city, and I think we all know that. And I'd really like to see maybe I don't know. We've seen a lot of public input. I don't know that we've invited, some of the big players in our state economy, Walker Siltronics or Tektronix or Intel or Precision Cast Parts or Oregon Iron Works or Gunderson or things like those big companies, and have this industrial symposium. What could work there? What couldn't work there? Well, maybe it's not the best site for a giant site, but we would love to have a site like this. Emerging technologies, things that do need water, things that do need electricity, and things that can travel by rail, and incorporate that. I've not seen anything in the press, and there's obviously things that you would say to the public that would be more meaningful to the public, like public access, that maybe we don't know about. Is that a possibility that we're not that we've overlooked, or is that part of? I didn't see that in the plan yet, and I didn't see where some of those interpretive, some of the reuse of the large, heavy buildings could be in a reuse situation. I think of, Bonneville Dam is a heavy industrial area, but it gets millions of visitors a year. Newport, on the other hand, is not a heavy industry area, but within downtown Old Newport, you walk by a beautiful wine bar, and then you see this large fish processing plant, and it works hand in hand, and it's kind of a lovely thing, and it's a nice addition to the city's economy. That's just a thought.
I think, that's something that we heard through the public process was how do you bring living wage jobs back to the property? And what we've tried to do with the zoning code is to allow those uses, whether it be food processing, whether it be, I think what's interesting with industrial is it's kind of changed throughout the years. You're really seeing this move to, while it's still technically industrial manufacturing, producing something, it's done on a much smaller footprint. And so those opportunities are certainly there. Aside from, zoning it strictly for that use, it's hard to dictate it, I guess it would be the best way. We did look at, where there's some opportunities to put, essentially, a minimum percentage of type of uses, right? That, we're really not, like, for industrial or manufacturing, or it's probably going to be more difficult to get on the property. So, could we put a minimum of X percent, right? And then, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, if it's the last thing and nobody will do it, maybe they have that conversation then if whether that was correct or not. But so those are some of the things we're thinking about and trying to accommodate that. I think the hard part is to just with, so much has been taken out of the property in terms of the existing industrial infrastructure, whether it be the piping, all the electric, all the transformers. It's been stripped, and so trying to get an industrial use of that size back in there is difficult. I mean, I don't disagree, and if we had the perfect person who came in and said, I want to bring in, 1,200 jobs, and I want to use D-Ink and Paper Machine 4, we're hoping we can set it up in a way that, here you go, you're outright permitted. So I completely understand where you're coming from and the significance of it, and maybe that is a discussion as we move forward through the public process. It's balancing. Everybody was like, oh, we want public access and we want this vibrant downtown that complements our existing downtown, but we want the jobs too. And so what is that right mix? And what are good paying jobs, but maybe doing something different is just as appropriate as manufacturing jobs that were there. And I think that's really the unknown. That's the hard part.
Thanks.
Sure.
Good point, Mike. Thanks. Bob?
Did you have something else?
You're not still up?
Found some money in the last 10 minutes.
I want more.
Well,
all right.
If nobody else has any comments or questions, thank you, Tony.
Thank you for the
Appreciate
time.
the update. Okay, next on the list is John Lewis from Public Works.
Great. Well, thank you. I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to start off with a thank you to Amy Wilhite. I think I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we've been asking this group to bring traffic issues to the Transportation Advisory Committee and take on those transportation issues at that committee level. Bob's been sits on that board as well, but Amy brought one of our best citizen presentations to us. And I'm sure she was not, you probably weren't representing this group, you were representing your own neighborhood.
Yeah, Gaffney Lane.
So she came from Gaffney Lane with an issue at Malala and Garden Meadow Drive. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that because I thought we had a good discussion. And we kept her there the whole meeting, whether she wanted to be there or not. But it was good to have that, and I think the TAC appreciated it. So I guess I just encourage that to others too. And I think we're already making some improvements.
I know the
there,
signage is already up. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So.
Well, John, could you tell us more about it? Because Bob did put that in his report, but he didn't elaborate on what the correction is going to be.
So the issue was the pedestrian crosswalk at Garden Meadow Court. Garden Meadow Drive. Okay. And Malala. Wilco was required to put in a little pedestrian median right there. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's not my favorite design in town, but let's just say it's dark. The crosswalk striping isn't our standard, and there's not really good signage there. So it's funny how I've driven through that area many times, hating it, but we haven't necessarily made the change. So it's also helpful to have, our employees drive through there all the time. It's helpful sometimes to get a different perspective and hear it. And I think that's what we did. So new signage, we're working with PGE to get some street lighting out there beyond what we have with the decorative acorns. And when we've got the right weather, we'll restripe it. Can't remember. I think that's the main things that we're planning to do.
That sounds a lot safer then for our walking public. Thank you.
So the other thing I wanted to mention was McLaughlin Boulevard Phase 2 project, which is along McLaughlin Boulevard from the Clackamas River Bridge to Dunes Drive. Just started construction, and so you'll notice cones and construction signage through there. Some of the cones and construction signage that you might have noticed is for the ODOT project that's going on the Gladstone side of 99E. They're doing a lot of work along through Gladstone, but this will kind of be an extension of that. So if you remember, there's a lot of pedestrian and bicycle improvements. They'll refurbish the pavement through there, a lot of entryway features that will make it look a lot similar to what we have in the first phase of the McLaughlin Boulevard project. So that's about a year-long project. They're supposed to get it done actually by year end, so it's actually less than a year-long project. I want to just mention, I can't remember if I've mentioned it to this group or not, but the Leland Myers Road corridor study, so that touches several neighborhoods, and John Burrell is managing that project, the Public Works Department, and he's been reaching out to neighborhoods. I know we're going to McLaughlin neighborhood. He's going to the McLaughlin neighborhood Thursday night, and I know there's a couple others that are queued up. We recognize that you don't have, most of you don't have meetings but every 3 months, so we want to try and get out. It's a little early because we don't have a lot in the way of findings, but we want to share the information that we do have with the neighborhoods, which is basically a lot of inventory right now of existing ADA ramp deficiencies, possibilities for better pedestrian access and bicycle access from 5th Street at Jackson all the way out to Myers and goes that wider section by Frontier Parkway, right about in that area. So we should be sharing more about that in the near future, and I just wanted to let you know we're coming. So we'll also bring with us some information about what we're planning this year with our pavement maintenance program. So I made, I think, more than enough copies, so if you want to take a couple of these, you're welcome to. But what I'm handing out is what we always call the preventative maintenance scope of work, and where we're proposing to do that work. So that's the things like the chip seals and the slurry seals. So that's on one side, and on the back side is more of the reconstruction work, which this year the majority of that's happening in the McLaughlin neighborhood. We do have plans to finish up Claremont, which we did a little more than one half of Claremont last year. Couldn't do it all because we really didn't have the water funds needed to finish that entire project. So this year we've got some more funding for water main replacements, so we're going to go ahead and finish that up as well and get the water work done, fix any underground utilities, and then reconstruct all of Claremont. So I gave away my copy of that. If anybody asks me a question about it, I don't have it in front of me anymore. But so that's an annual effort. That's a pretty big effort, and if you got questions or concerns, feel free to ask. We also will be. We're about in the third year of our 5-year maintenance plan, which is the plan we've been kind of following for the last several years. We're going to update that this year as well. So that looks at some of the condition rating information that we do of our streets. From usually every 3 years, we go in and pay a consultant that goes in and evaluates those streets, looks at how much cracking and how much disturbed pavement there is, and ranks all those streets by condition. And then we look at that combined with a bunch of other criteria and try to put forth a look ahead as to what we're going to do, so that we can then send those to the utility providers, the franchise utility providers, our own utilities as well, and try and marry up projects in a way that isn't going to be wasteful or a redo of a project that we just paved. So more to come on that as well. So, and we talked transit. Oh, one other thing I'll just mention. Over the weekend, we had a pretty significant water main break on High Street. So anybody that lives there, I know, Alice, you live there, just down the street from you. We had a pretty significant water main break. It was really only a 6-inch pipe, but would have thought it was 24-inch the way the water was pouring out of the street and plugging up catch basins. We flooded 3 basements, and it's just one of those old pipes that we have in our system. And the thing that is concerning about it is, as you recall, with the water rate rollback vote that we had, we passed that vote, but what we didn't take on was the opportunity to raise rates beyond 3% so that we could help pay for capital. So I just want to put a plug in for literally put a plug in in the water line leaks, and just kind of reach out to you and remind you that all the energy that went into fixing this particular pipeline is it's a good fix. Not saying there's a problem with the fix. It's just a small fix on an old pipeline, and when we really had the funding to go ahead and replace it, any investment that we put in that repair, which was significant. I mean, we're going to probably pay a property claim. We're probably, we've got all the overtime associated with that, all the energy to kind of get it buttoned up and then restored so that the front yards of those people's houses who were flooded, all that investment kind of gets washed down the drain, because that patch, even though it's a few feet, doesn't get saved. It just stays in the ground, and we have to move over and put the water line, next to it somewhere. So it's just not real efficient. If we could get ahead of this with some funding for capital, we would be able to. We're probably always going to have water main breaks, but they're not going to be quite, as extensive. And when we see these, it's just a little frustrating. So I'm starting a little early. We still plan to bring that conversation back to the City Commission and back to the public with regard to need for additional rates for pipeline replacement, really. So just wanted to share those. I'll try to bring those when I think about them. We have them quite often, but this one here was prominent. I knew it was near Alice's house. I'm not really sure where you live on High, but I knew it was near that, and so just a reminder that water lines are important.
They can only get worse.
They can only get worse. That's right. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, John. I don't see Amber, so I guess we will.
Can we?
We have some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Question.
Yes, sure. Oh, sure. Excuse me. Well, Kathy's the only one I see.
Okay, I'm going to go first.
Excuse me.
I'm
Okay.
adding.
John,
Yes.
during the storm and the flooding, I called as I'm coming off the bypass and taking the right. There was one of the storm drain manholes, and the water was just gushing out. And I was hoping there wasn't a blockage, or it just was too much. It was, by the New Creek, just down from the chamber. It was between the chamber and when you take the right. It was on the north side of the street there.
I hadn't heard about it, but my sense is it was probably just too much for the catch basin to take, and there's a pretty steep grade coming down Beaver Creek Road there, so it's sometimes that water just blows out around it. I'm not sure what the situation was.
Doing quite well. Luckily, it's the road, the sidewalk, and it's not any houses, but it was coming really fast and furious.
You get a fair amount of, we've got some areas that we check pretty regularly.
Well, it's like there must have been a lot of pressure, because, the lid was up and cockeyed, and the water was just pouring out. So I did report it, and I think I did it to the receptionist.
Well,
yeah.
thank you for that, because that's a good way to get us out there.
Yeah.
Paul?
John, on the pavement projects, Kenema, like Fifth Avenue, is obviously it's a lower traveled road, but it's heaving and moving and needs to be fixed dramatically. And we don't. So how do neighborhoods get a chance to be in the queue of the decision making in the prioritization, so we understand where we sit, or if we have any input into this? So it's kind of like, is there a long prioritization list of all roads in the city? And can we be privy to that? And is there some ability of a neighborhood to convene and look at this and say, okay, we think the direction of this monies in our neighborhood might be better served doing this or this? It seems like we're outside of the loop, and is there a way we can get inside the loop of the decision making?
Well, by design, we try to not keep these are decisions that we try not to make too political, or we're trying to make those decisions based on criteria, really. So it's conditional criteria. Is there bus traffic on that particular street? How do we split it amongst the neighborhoods? We do try to share the love around all the neighborhoods, but we're not looking at it from a per foot, per neighborhood kind of feel. We're just trying to make sure over that 5-year period, when we look at the map, we say, well, that's a good spread of the work. But it's really most based on need. And I would say Fifth Avenue, Paul, you've been talking about it since we adopted the last 5-year plan. So my sense is it's going to show up on the next 5-year plan. But in reality, Kenema's got good roads, with the exception of Fifth is pretty problematic roadway. So I hear you there. But we'd like to make objective decisions without a public vote, if you will, because there's always somebody that's in the room that wants their particular street fixed. That's why we don't ask the mayor which street he lives on so that he can vote on it. It's really based on objective criteria.
Well, Third Avenue is really in need of repair in Kenema.
Well, not all of it.
Not all of it, but
right.
But
so some of it is, some of it isn't. I get that, but
in
if we had all the money to fix all of our roads, we wouldn't have to make those objective decisions.
It's trying to get into the loop and understanding where we are so that we're not on the outside but in the inside. And if there's a way that could be facilitated somewhere down the line, I think that would be positive.
Okay. We can definitely share you our criteria, and so you know what kind of decisions we're making there.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for John? Karen?
Actually, I just have a quick comment for John, and then a quick report for Amber, who wasn't well today.
Okay, thank you.
I found out one drawback with Go Request. There's a big pothole on Malala right next to the center line, southbound, just as you've come off Beaver Creek Road. It's not a good place to stop and take a picture of it with my iPhone.
Did you get wet?
Let's just say that the traffic on Malala does not incline, doesn't make it a good spot to get you a good photograph of the pothole, but there's a doozy of a pothole next to the center line along there. So as your crew is driving along,
I think I know it. I think we've seen it. We've been trying to plug it, and it's hard to plug these things when it's wet out. They just doesn't really want to.
I think it's eating whatever you're feeding it.
Literally, it is. I know.
And my tire, I've learned to make sure I stay over to the right a little better along there. I drive that too often. Main thing from the chamber is the State of the City luncheon. Friday, March 14th, starting at 11:30. It'll be at Abernathy Center. If you'd like to eat lunch, it is $25 for a delicious plated lunch from Abernathy, or I guess buffet. We're expecting the mayor to start speaking about 11:10, 11:15. We have had some requests for just coming and listening, and that is available. We're asking people to come at about 10 after 11. We'll have some chairs set up in the back if you want to just sit and listen to what the mayor has to say in his fourth and final delivery of the State of the City. It would be nice if you do plan just to come and sit, if you could call the chamber and let us know so we know how many chairs to have ready. If you'd like to join us for lunch, you can pay for a reservation online at OregonCity.org.
Can you remind us of the date of that again?
Friday, March 14th. Lunch starts at 11:30. And Bob signed up already.
Lunch is at 11:30, but the mayor starts speaking at 11:10?
The lunch starts at 11:30. We're anticipating that Doug will start speaking about 11:10. What we're asking, or 12:10. Sorry,
okay,
thank you.
Right. Thank
Get
you.
my 11s and my 12s straight. Yes.
Okay.
12:10.
All right.
12:10 for visitors, 12:15 approximately for the mayor's address.
That's kind of where we're estimating. What we'd like to do is have the luncheon guests come in, check in, get their luncheon served, and then if you'd like to just come listen, that you arrive after everyone's gotten their lunches.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay. Approval of the minutes.
Hold on, I think, Tom, did you?
Oh, Tom, I'm sorry.
Karen, did Amber share anything with you regarding the chamber after hours with the CIC?
It is still in the planning stages. I double-checked this morning. We have not nailed down a location for it yet.
Okay, so it's not
it
going
will
to...
be, I believe it's March 20th.
Okay, so it is still in March.
It is
at
still
this
in
point.
March. It's the third Thursday, beginning at 5:30. But as of this morning, when I asked, there was not a specific location yet.
Thank you.
Okay, who else? Nobody? Okay. Didn't miss anyone then. Okay, approval of the minutes.
Before I have already received Joyce sent 2 comments in, clarifying where I had put currently no recognized groups. She just wanted to clarify no recognized neighborhood watch groups. That was in where Chris was giving her presentation. And then also just clarifying what she said about Parks and Rec and things. So those will be included in the adjusted minutes.
Okay, the first, Amy, say that again. The first
On
change.
2A, where it says
2A.
there are currently no recognized groups, just adding in currently no recognized neighborhood watch groups.
Watch groups, okay, and then the other correction is where?
Is,
On the last paragraph, under my comments.
yeah, under roundtable, under Joyce's comments, she just clarified
Thing missing. Here
one
we
I had
are.
heard wrong, as it was stage, not storage, and then just a little bit of a wording.
And, yeah, the
Changing it to read
abbreviation's not PNR, it's
PRAC, Parks and Rec Committee announced the
Parks and
Buena
Rec
Vista
Advisory
House.
Committee. And don't forget to put the advisory committee. I may have left that out in my email.
Parks and Rec Advisory Committee?
Yes, that's PRAC.
Okay. All right, so Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, PRAC, announced the Buena Vista House at Atkinson Park is being condemned. PRAC is hoping to involve the OC High School construction class in a new project at Atkinson Park. They are currently building a stage at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. So
Got it.
that's how it will be corrected to read.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other corrections? All right, let's vote on the minutes as.
Need someone to.
Yeah, we need.
Oh,
I
excuse
thought
me.
someone was gonna.
Move to approve.
Okay. Oh.
Do we have a second? Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved as corrected.
Okay, so let's go ahead and vote. Tony,
Aye.
Michael,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Amy,
Aye.
Kathy,
Yes.
Tom,
Abstain.
Joyce,
Aye.
Faith,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Ingra,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and it passes with one abstention.
Okay, thank you. We have no unfinished business, so we're going to move right into new business. We have one item, and that is my inability to complete my term. So Bob LaSalle, our bylaws chair, is going to refresh our memory and begin the process of re-electing a chair.
The Article 5, Section 3 states, in the event that an officer vacates his or her position, an election to fill that position will be held pursuant to the provisions in Article 8, Section 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Tom informed me tonight that we made a little mistake in our final edit of the bylaws. There is no Section 8. So, the time frame and sequences of nominations and elections shall be the same as described therein, but not necessarily in the same months as regular elections. So that puts us, the nominating committee will be selected at the March general meeting. The nominating, let's see, wait a minute here. The nominating committee will present the names of the nominees to the general membership at the general meeting in April, and the election of the officer will be held at the May general meeting. So tonight we have to select or volunteer a nominating committee.
Do our bylaws say how many people have to be on the bylaw or the
No, it
nominating
doesn't.
committee?
No.
So, what do you think, Bob?
I would
A minimum
suggest
of
three.
two? Okay, minimum of three? Okay, okay. Could we have some volunteers for that?
Tom?
Tom O'Brien?
Go ahead, Mike.
All right, me too.
Mike Berman?
Volunteer.
One more, please.
Kathy?
Kathy? Oh, I didn't see you down there. Okay. All right, Kathy Hogan, we have our three, unless anyone else wants to join the group. We don't have to stop at three if someone else wants to join. Okay. If not, then our nominating committee will bring our nominees to our next meeting in April. Correct, Bob?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's one thing to note in the nominating committee, if you'll just check your bylaws, that before you bring the names, you need to make sure that you've talked to them and that they have accepted.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just and one thing that Damon did last time, that he just I was part of the nominating committee. Before the nominating committee met itself, he just called everybody and asked them if they wanted to nominate someone, and then he just kind of got some precursor, just as a suggestion. It doesn't have to be done that way, but It was kind of a nice.
We can't use the choo-choo train?
You can do however you want.
Well, I'd just
Oh.
like to thank Alice for her commitment to
Yeah.
the sheriff's position and the fine job she did.
Thank you for that. Ingrid, did you have a comment?
I just had a question. So will you wait until the new one is elected, or?
Yes, I can stay through the process.
John try to flood you out. That's you got the message.
Okay, well, thanks, Bob. That was very, very speedy. And now we'll move on. Committee reports. I did not have one submitted from our public safety representative. That would be Todd Last. And
We didn't. There wasn't a meeting. Is probably why.
Oh, is that why? Okay. And then land use did not submit a
Can I make a brief statement? On,
yes. Why is it that you're not submitting a report?
well, I didn't, but Wednesday.
Okay, but why isn't it? Why are you not submitting a written report as I asked several months back?
I didn't get around to it.
Okay, well, that's the honest answer. Okay, go ahead.
There is at this next city commission meeting, we're going to be talking about the South End concept plan again, as it's going into the final stages. And for all of those, or for anybody that has any concern, this is an opportunity for them to come before the city commission, and this is critical. My opinion is that R2 on the fringe of our city is a very delicate situation where you have limited transportational access. And we already had multiple planning commission hearings, as an example, on Central Point Road in a rezoning application where the planning commission came back and emphatically said that R6 was not acceptable, it should be R8 or greater. But yet at the same time, we could go out in a very similar situation like on the South End concept plan and take 54% of all of the land and zone it at R2. And so there's a contradiction, at least my perception, that exists as a direct result of what was said within the Planning Commission to what is they're attempting to do. So if anybody has any opinions about it, please come to the meeting. This Wednesday, 7 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And transportation, Bob did submit a written report. Does anyone have any questions about the report that Bob submitted? Okay. All right. Thanks. Oh, Ingra.
I wasn't able to open it up, so can he give a short, or is it a long report?
No, it's not. He can.
Actually, the main thing was the TriMet presentation that you received tonight. We received at the Transportation Advisory Committee, just one different person, but pretty much the same presentation. And then they also mentioned the bus service planning open house. That was on my report. Police Chief Band gave us some information on the high incidence of traffic accidents in Oregon City, which is pretty interesting, but it's just a first look at it right now. They're continuing to research that problem and come up with solutions, hopefully sooner than later. But it seems like compared to other comparable cities, our accident rates are higher, and most of them are rear-end accidents.
Bob, can I interrupt you? Was that in reaction to our request for you to ask? Remember when Mike said there were more police presence on Main Street, and we asked you to inquire about that?
No, that was a result of the Chiefs Advisory Council meeting.
I'm getting the two committees mixed
Right,
up. Okay,
right.
pardon me.
And then again, reference to Amy's presentation at the TAC on the problems at the crosswalk, and it was a very good example of a citizen presentation ending up with some true action and improvements in the dangers of that intersection, and it'll get better now. And that's pretty much it. Joyce?
My question isn't for you. My question was on the committee reports, why are we limited to public safety, land use, and transportation? because of the, there's the Parks and Rec, and then there's the Natural Resources, and Brian, you're on Natural Resources, and just wondering,
three
because,
standing committees.
the neighborhood should be interested in what those are going on. So I did read in our bylaws, these were the only 3 standing committees.
Correct.
So just my question was, why were those the only chosen committees? And if we couldn't get just a quick report from from PRAC and also from Natural Resources at these meetings.
Well, these 3 standing committees, we have representatives from this group who attend those.
You do on PRAC and the Natural Resources also.
Okay, we could certainly add that. Who are our representatives on those 2?
I'm chair of the Natural Resources Committee, but it wasn't as a representative of here. I just happened, I was there before I was here.
Right.
I think to answer Joyce's question, these standing committees have been on as standing committees before. That has nothing to do with the boards and committees and commissions that are out there. These happen to be standing committees of things that in the that we had wanted to see done. And over time, there's been things that have come up, land use issues, especially it used to be more.
The land use, yes,
So,
of course.
And so those have been for years, and it just so happened that we had members, and we just thought Alice thought, let's just ask them to give a brief report. It was separate from the fact that there's all these other boards and commissions. So they're kind of, it looks that way, but they were totally separate. But if we want to
I
change
take
it,
your point, Joyce.
yeah,
There's no reason
absolutely.
why we can't hear from those other committees if people are willing to report on a regular basis to us.
Actually, I thought maybe it was because these were the only meetings that people were really going to, that they weren't going to others and nobody else volunteered.
No,
Well,
they're
that was-
separate.
yeah.
They're completely separate.
Yeah,
These
that's
standing
what I mean.
committees are separate from the boards and commissions.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just-
what
Well,
I mean.
I-
I think,
I-
and
I
nobody
think-
has volunteered to do
I
it.
think maybe I might be wrong, but the genesis of the CIC kind of revolved around or emanated from those 3 committees. So they're sort of intertwined, even though the other ones are as important. And I mean, we get reports from the chamber, and obviously we're not a chamber-driven organization. And OCP, but OCPW. But I think those public safety, land use, and transportation are part of what our description, our purposes.
I think if my suggestion, if we want to hear from the other committees, it's not a committee report. It would be a boards and commissions agenda item. I mean, I'm not saying we can't have it. I'm
Right.
saying it would be a different
Right.
agenda.
And still be able to have them on this.
So it would be like under item number 4, Chamber of Commerce update. It could be Natural Resources update.
Well, we could have like a
Parks
boards
and
and
Rec
commissions
update.
would be 5, and then you'd have A, Parks and Rec, B, Natural Resource, something like
Yeah.
that.
We just have a different agenda item for it, and those would all fall under it. What's the membership's?
the idea.
Yeah, what's the member?
Tom has
Oh,
a-
Tom, I'm sorry.
I believe that the bylaws do give us the opportunity to do what Joyce is requesting, that the chair can, from time to time, ask for other committees to be formed or other reports. And I think it's important to all of us, when you consider the amount of monies that go into the upkeep and maintenance, let alone construction, in our parks. I'm glad we have somebody on PRAC who can keep us informed of the decisions that are being made by PRAC. I think Natural Resources, I'd leave that up to the committee, but since we have a chair from that committee in our presence, I think it would be very wonderful if we could get a report from them as well. Some of us try to attend meetings, but it becomes overwhelming when you have as many during the course of a month as we have, and I would like to be able to reduce the number I go to.
How about this?
Make a motion.
What if we make a motion that we change the agenda and we no longer have committee reports, because we actually do not have any active committees at this time? They're not actually acting as a committee. And that we change number 8 to be boards and commission reports, or however it's worded on the city website, and then we can add the ones that we want. So we can have public safety, land use, transportation, prac, natural history. Or nat. what
Although
is it?
land use does have to be a standing committee of this organization.
But it doesn't have to have a report.
Why
It
don't we
As
does-
does
yeah.
public
Add it.
safety and
I would make a
land
motion
use.
to add.
It is, we still have the standing committees, but we don't ask for a report every month as their committee, right?
We could make those as ad hoc committees for now. Parks and natural resource, that's at the disposal or choice of the chair.
Right, and well, ad
According to our
hoc generally
bylaws.
means it's just for a short time. And I think what Joyce is recommending is that they routinely report. Is that true, Joyce?
Well, when I looked at public safety, mostly that's going to be a report from the chief's advisory, is that?
Yes, that's
Correct,
right.
but that's not really a
And-
committee.
And transportation is just a report from the city's transportation.
Mhm.
And that's not a committee. The only real committee that the CIC has would be land use, because there is no other city land use committee. Every neighborhood has their own land use chair. And that's why it was, a little confusing when I read through the agenda, and I thought, well, natural resources and PrAC should be represented, and if anybody else is attending or, is on any of the boards.
And I believe that's the whole crux of the issue. Sometimes PrAC has trouble getting enough people to their own meetings, let alone sending someone out to participate with us. But
I have
we're
a couple.
fortunate to have Joyce here.
That you're done.
Oh,
I
Karen.
was going to say, Karen was next, but.
First of all, on some of what you're doing as committee reports, are any of those, is a CIC member required to be a representative to another committee? So those 3 standing committee reports, those don't
Except for
involve.
transportation. Except for land use.
Okay, so these are just internal ad hoc committees that connect, right? My one, I don't agree with Joyce. I was on the library board. I wouldn't expect to give you a library board report if I were still on the library board. Because coincidentally, a CIC member is also a member of another board, it's not uniform. And I agree with Tom, people go to enough meetings, so do you want to require that every board in the city report to CIC, take advantage of the fact that coincidentally you have somebody sitting on another board?
Right.
Or, personally, I don't support the additional report.
Well, we don't even have a motion on the floor. Could we have a motion,
Amy was
please?
trying.
Well, let's not do a motion. I mean, no
Why
offense,
not?
no offense, but
Well, we could-
you can change the agenda any way you want without doing a motion. There's no need to do a motion to change the agenda. If you, as chair, want to change the agenda, you can change the agenda.
Well, I'm trying to get the input from the membership, what they want, and the best way to do that is to take a vote.
Okay, well, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But
can
what
I-
I'm saying is, you can collectively get that information, and then you can make a decision, with the
Can
group.
I just say,
and
can we just leave it as is? That's what my motion
Well,
is.
we can vote on it. That's what I want to do.
Well, why not just
Need a second?
make committee
Is there a
reports?
second? Just leave it as is. It's fine with me.
Why don't we just make committee reports less, make it maybe more ambiguous and have it just be, I guess, public reports or I guess committee reports?
Well, as chair, I'm going to have to say, I agree with Karen. We didn't really want to lengthen this meeting past 9 o'clock if we could help it.
Yeah.
And so, however, I hear Joyce and I hear Brian. You're on important committees, and maybe you have things you'd like to share from time to time. So I need to know if the membership wants to have me put that on the agenda.
Okay. Maybe they need to submit them to you then, so that you know if it's
Well, we could-
actionable to.
I like the idea of just having another agenda item for those committees when they want to report.
I'd like to make a motion that we have an agenda item that if any outside committees wish to bring comments forth from those committees, we can view them at that time.
I don't know why it couldn't fit under new business for that matter.
Yeah.
New business, by
Oh,
definition.
Faith?
Well, why can't we just do it during roundtable?
That's what I was
And
going
the
to
Well,
ones-
we have a
yeah.
motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll
Third-
second.
Okay. So we have a
Yeah.
live motion now.
Yeah.
Tom, would you repeat your motion?
Yeah, discussion.
Katie? The motion is to allow anyone who happens to participate in other committees involved with the city, that should they elect to do so, they are given the opportunity within our agenda to share that information with the CIC.
Okay. Now, Faith, would you like to discuss that?
Well, yeah, I just think, yeah, this just makes the meeting go on longer. I can understand how this was, the CIC started up because of public safety, land use and transportation issues. That makes total sense. And usually you don't even have a report from most of those. But during the roundtable, if we're on other, you know, if we've done other things or we've attended the library board and something happened that we thought should be shared with everyone, then this is a place to share it, is during the roundtable, I would
So
think.
is that in support of the
No,
motion?
no,
Or
saying no,
That's
don't
a
add
no.
it as a
Just
separate
leave it as it is?
Yeah.
Okay, that was your comment. Amy, I believe you're next.
Yeah, my comment would be not only agreeing with Faith, but now my comment would be to just completely take off the committee reports, take them off, and then if something needs to be added, then those chairs would then just submit, like anybody else would, to the agenda, and you'd add it in each month. But not every month go around again, do you have something, do you have something, do you have something?
Yeah.
They can submit it, they do it within 7 days like anybody else would. It doesn't take it off, it just doesn't have to be then, do you have anything, do you have anything, do you have anything? Because we're not really actively committeeing.
Well, that's true, but
It's just a report.
But the Chiefs Advisory, although I think they take summers off, meet
It's every other month.
routinely, and so does TAC. So
Yes, but then we're singling it out, and it's not an active committee on the CIC. Bob doesn't have a committee under him on the CIC. He's just reporting
I
as
see what you're saying.
So
Right.
it doesn't. You're giving it, just like what Karen said. You're giving it weight when yes, it's important information, but he can easily just do. If he had something really important, he would let you know that he had something. Then you'd add it in.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say it might be possible to do this under guest speakers. You know, there may be stuff that's important, like the city recommended street tree list, the heritage tree nomination thing, like the mayor just nominated one of his own trees, and you know, that's all functioning things in the city that is of interest to the neighborhood thing, and that's stuff I could talk about if
That's not guest.
given the time. Of course, I would have to put a different hat on when I did that and go sit out there, you know. But anyway, that's another idea.
Another issue is historic preservation in the city, as is how it might affect things like the Blue Heron and the Legacy Project. And so I've gone before and been listening to the HRB a lot.
Right.
And that's another
I'd like to
very
call for a vote.
Good. Are you calling the question? Okay.
I'm still on the screen.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
You are?
I should be.
Where?
Yeah, he is. He's on agenda.
Screen does not always
Go ahead and
update.
click on the floor.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
then, do you have some
Then do it again.
comment? You
Are we going to let him
Yeah, 'cause he
squeak
was
under
actually
your
on.
call for the question? Okay.
Well, I'd just like to suggest that we not list all the committees in the city on our agenda,
Right.
but if somebody has something that would be important to present to the CIC, that they present it to the chair, request an agenda item, and then give a written report that can be included as a attachment to the agenda. That would save time. If you submit a written report to the chair or Katie to be included as an agenda, if you don't submit the report, you don't save any time.
And if you can't open it from the email, you can go to the city's website and open it that way too, once it's posted.
I sent it to you too by email.
Okay.
I got it 2 copies and I couldn't.
No, I sent it again by email.
The question has been called to vote, and what I understand from Tom's motion is that we would add an opportunity for people to submit something if they wanted to speak. Is that what it was, Tom? Now I'm confused in what the motion was.
Yes,
Katie can-
basically, so I have anyone who happens to participate in other boards or committees be given the opportunity on the agenda to speak if they so
Should they do
want
that?
to. Yeah,
Yeah,
so they
and it
desire.
would not be on the agenda under any other circumstance. Is that my, do I understand it correctly?
Correct.
And there was no address of changing the committee reports as they currently are, even though we've discussed it. That was not part of the
That
motion.
was not part of the motion.
No, so it would be no change in that regard, the motion that we're voting on.
No, but you can change.
Question.
Okay, right.
So
All right.
we've already done
We
that,
have
so
to-
we're,
we have- I'm
okay,
just
sorry.
clarifying what
Do you
we're
have a-
voting on.
Do you have a question?
So if we vote against it, then the person could still make the report during the roundtable, and it
Yes.
would be okay.
That's
All right.
correct.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to vote. So, Tony?
Yep.
Michael?
Say yes or no, or no, yes. I'll say no.
Okay. Paul?
Yes.
Amy?
No.
Kathy?
Abstain.
Tom?
I'm going to pull a Damon. No.
No. Joyce?
Yes.
Faith?
No.
Alice?
No.
Bob?
No.
Barbara?
No.
Karen?
No.
Harris?
No.
Ingra?
No.
Marianne?
No.
And Brian?
Yes.
Does not pass.
All
Well, that
because-
was-
Did you
all
say that?
because of Tom.
Yes.
So that means it's the status quo.
That's correct. Nothing has changed.
See, we got what we wanted.
Yeah. But that was a good that was a good exercise in parliamentary
I
procedure.
don't want to put a motion, but I'd
Only
like to
took 10
suggest.
minutes.
I'd like to suggest to the chair that she change the agenda. Think about that.
Okay.
Well,
So that we don't each month say, do you have a report, do you have a report?
Well, the whole
Because
idea.
otherwise,
Yeah.
you have now made it, you're picking and choosing, because we do not have any current active committees. These are just happen to be committees, these are standing committees, but they're not active at the moment.
can number 8 just be a call for reports? Just as a
No,
general
we
rate?
already voted.
No.
It was no change. Moving on.
She can do whatever she wants, but.
You missed your opportunity.
Yeah.
You had your opportunity.
Yeah, you could have.
When you do your mass email to all
So
this
forever
out,
hold
could you
your
put a
peace.
little blurb? Do you have any reports now or forever hold your peace? Send it to them. No. Remind us.
Let's move on to roundtable.
Yes, please. All right, we're going to start with Karen Mori.
I just want to apologize. I was late tonight because we had a Clackamas County Heritage Coordinating Council meeting for the first time in almost a year, which is representatives of all the heritage sites throughout the county. It wasn't heavily attended, but it had good attendance. And the Clackamas County Tourism and Development Commission is looking more at heritage tourism. So that's good news for those of us that know it. That's what tends to bring the dollars to Oregon City.
Good. Faith.
We met on Tuesday, February 9th, and we're going to have Chris Wadsworth do the Neighborhood Watch thing for our April meeting, and then we're going to do emergency preparedness and have the fire department people speak at our July meeting. And basically, I went on the tour on Friday of the heron and the blue heron plant, and it's really, for anyone who hasn't gone, you really should go. It was Tony was just great. He was great leading our group, and it was a beautiful day, and everything was dry, and there was no rain, and nothing was slick or anything, and it's just really an interesting. The more people, he said he's doing 2 or 3 tours a week. So that's good with different groups, because the more people that go through, the more they'll get excited about it. No, anyway,
Thanks.
highly
Barb?
recommend it.
Ditto.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful, I went with Kelly Moosberger, and it was very informative. I had been before. This was a completely different journey through the mill.
So it was very interesting. I would like to comment on last month's comments about the Teen Challenge. And I looked it up, and I was pretty much surprised at what's involved in it, what kind of people are involved, and how much help it is for the community and for the people involved. So you go to Teen Challenge, Pacific Northwest, and you can read what a wonderful program this is. And that's all I have.
So, sorry, just to add on to that, Barbara had invited someone to come to our meeting tonight, and unfortunately she had to leave early. Her name was Sandra, and she brought a letter from the executive director of Teen Challenge, and she asked that I email this out to you folks so that you have a chance to read it.
Thank you.
That is her submission to our record.
Thank you. Brian?
Okay. Yeah, we're in between, about halfway between our every 3-month meetings, and we've had to go through one land use application since that meeting. Subaru is wanting to build a sort of a garage, I guess they'd call it, and back sort of almost underneath the railroad track, so it won't be very visible. But I also attended the Blue Heron thing, and not only was it weather dry, but the wind was out of the north, so all the mist from the falls blew away from us. It was completely dry, and we could take pictures. It was great. And yeah, it's an amazing, that by itself could transform Oregon City, that falls, and the people it will attract once it's available to go see, which it hasn't been for a long, long time. And so that's something I see as important for the future of this town. Okay.
Thank you.
Kenema's has a couple land use actions happening and going through the HRB, and one of the issues that comes up is Kenema is in a overlay district for landslides and has immense natural water opportunities that percolate right out of the bluff everywhere. So it's in a dialogue with John about going through and reading the code, and you get through and you can spend a lot of time reading code, but it's not a simple read, and you can cherry pick it, and it's not necessarily smart to be a cherry picker. But what I was asked of John is maybe we could have a Cliff Notes version that would make it easier for people to come back and say, here's a creek or a wetlands. What is the setback rules? How many feet? What are the obvious things without, and if they don't tell us enough, then they tell us where to go, where then we can go in and read it for more. But I think all over our city we have all of these things happening, and we need to have a ready, easy to read ability to break down some of these critical land use considerations of not only sidewalks, curbs, streets, alleyways, everything that we can get along that are part of development or change, and make it easy so that people don't come up with misperceptions or they're not they don't have a good firm idea about how all of this stuff impacts us. But anyway, it was I was just spending a lot of time reading this stuff because all of a sudden I get into steep slopes, and I'm trying to use a calculator to determine the percentage of slope. And how do I come back and determine this, because the code all of a sudden says anything over 25% you can't build on it. Period. It didn't give you yes, no mitigating factors. It just said 25% and drew a line under it and said that's the end. And so all of a sudden I'm saying, maybe I need to know more, because when somebody's trying to build in a steep slope area, or they even use a word called toe, the toe of a slope. If you cut away the toe of a slope, you can undermine then the whole slope.
Yeah.
And so it becomes very critical in trying to sort through all of this, and I just I'm not the most technical reader, but I'm pretty good at it, and but I can see very easily that it would be a lot nicer if we had a Cliff Notes version that could take us through this stuff better, and then I think then everybody would be on the same hymn book of understanding what you can do and what you can't do. Even the historical aspects of a river or creek. Was the creek there? And if the creek or pond was there, then it's grandfathered. Well, how long does the grandfathering stay in effect? Because that has to do with South End Concept Plan, or many of these other developments like on Central Point Road. And all of those then have setbacks, and you're saying, okay, there was a creek there and that creek has been in existence. Does that mean that we have a 50-foot or 100-foot setback from that creek?
Paul, are you trying to get us to figure out your answer for you?
No, I'm trying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that we need something that's easy for people to go through.
Kathy?
All right. I went on that walk, but not with you guys in the nice weather. Thank you very much. I was soaking wet. My camera was foggy. And I told Katie I want it on a good day. When you do it again, please, dear. And I understand what Paul's talking about. We have a 8-lot subdivision, and there's a creek running through it. And this year I got pictures of the water. So 2 of the houses, I'll bet you, will have that either underneath their house being piped out, and they will not know it's there because not everybody understands what their due diligence means, and it's not always in when you buy the house. And the people's 3 houses next to that property would get water in their property. So they've mitigated it a little bit, but not this year when the water was running through it into the park and Filbert Run. So we need to have something that really says 8 houses shouldn't be on that 2 acres. It shouldn't be a house over that, even piping it out. Aside from that, Phyllis Stocking has Mother's Day, May 10th, we're doing bingo at the Pioneer Center. And July, we do concerts in the park. Come spend your money. We need it.
Tom?
Yes, I just wanted to give the people in our neighborhood a heads up to our April 17th meeting. It's a Thursday evening at 7 o'clock at the Oregon City Methodist Church. A while back, the chair or the general manager of TriMet, Mr. McFarland, visited with the city commission, and he had with him that evening a fellow by the name of Steve Kotz. And they presented things to the commission and encouraged our involvement, as we have heard tonight, to participate in the planning process that they have for this whole southeast area of the metro complex. At that meeting, I invited these individuals who were there to come to our neighborhood association meeting, because we took a lot of flack at our neighborhood association meeting when TriMet pulled the bus line that had been there serving our community. We had people who had purchased homes in the vicinity because TriMet had access to it, and they were quite disappointed that their investment in homes had been negated. And we had people, as Kathy mentioned earlier to the people who visited tonight, that a number of people who relied on the transportation provided for special needs people, and if you aren't within a certain distance of a bus line, you can no longer get that service. So anyone who has an interest in talking to the TriMet representatives, the offer or invitation is there to join us on April 17th.
Nothing. Okay. Amy?
I just want to again thank John and Martin for, after presenting such quick, swift action that they took on Molalla Avenue at Garden Meadow. It was fun to see. I mean, within it was less than a week, and the first signs were up, and then about a week later, I think some more signs were up. So it was just nice to see that, and for our neighborhood to know that they're listening, and I appreciate that.
Well, again, in Park Place, we had the big land use issues, the large turnouts for our meetings. I'm just so proud of those neighbors of ours that are standing their ground on this land use issue. It's an amazing process to watch when these neighbors get together and get the hair on the back of their neck up. It's pretty interesting. I went on the falls. All I can say about the falls is it's just an absolute gem for Oregon City. You've got to go on that tour. And our meetings now at Park Place have been changed from the Red Community Building to the old Park Place School on the Front Avenue. So the insurance issues got us out, forced us out of the Clackamas County Community Building. So.
Any more, John?
I just want to touch on Paul's comments about the Cliff Notes, and some of you that have attention to detail know that trying to take a legal document like your city code and turn it into a summarized version is a dangerous thing to do. And I'm telling you straight up, for one, staff doesn't have the time for that, and for two, I think it's a huge mistake. I get that those codes are complicated. I've avoided the code my whole career, and now I'm finding myself deep into the code more often than I want to be. And I don't disagree, it's not confusing, but to try and abbreviate it in an executive summary kind of fashion is just a mistake waiting to happen. So, Paul, I mean, we'll work through individual developments and try to provide answers, and I know those answers won't always be met with acceptance, but we'll do our best. So,
I just wanted to mention the Keene event again this Thursday, March 6th, from 5:30 to 8. And I believe Tony said that the address for that was 505. It's actually 515 Northwest 13th Avenue in Portland. I can re-email out that information tomorrow so that you can have that in your email boxes. And then Chris Wadsworth was kind enough to drop off some neighborhood watch packets in case you're interested in that program. You're more than welcome to pick one of those up on your way out. I'll set them back there by the TriMet stuff. And then she also dropped off some statistics that she pulled together for everyone. So I'll set those back there as well.
Great. Tony?
Hi, we're approaching our next quarterly meeting in April, I think April 8th. So far so good. We having some to make a little bit of changes to it because the kind of like double booked with the church for the April 8th. So we're trying to see if we can use the cemetery location for the meeting. And I think I was able to submit a little letter of support to McLaughlin, the McLaughlin Memorial Association for the grant last week. So far so good. Yeah.
I also went on the Falls tour, the Mill tour, on Friday, which was a great day, as everybody said. And I mean, I've been around Clackamas County for 40 years. I lived in Oregon City for 22 years. I've never been down there next to the falls except in the jet boat one time, and I've always wanted to. I mean, I've stopped at the viewpoint many times. Drove down there at dawn on February 9th, 1996, to see the falls. And being out there on that point that I've always looked at, it was fabulous, right? I mean, it's one of those things that it's kind of the way downtown Portland used to be, in that you couldn't see the river. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I mean, the Portland Journal building was right alongside there. That's where Tom McCall Park for 2 blocks is now. And now, the river is really the lifeblood of Portland. And the falls here is really the terminus of the urban river area. and it was just so, it was really so affirming of, I think, that direction of getting everybody to be able to see it and enjoy it, right? It certainly is much greater than just this region, right? I mean, it's a national treasure, one that's been covered up for a long time. So really enjoyed that.
Sarah?
So how many of you have your tickets for Thursday night's presentation at Keene? You've already made your reservations? Hey, great. There's 2 or 3 of us that are going to be going. So all the rest of you, it's not too late they'd like you to reserve online. So Amy's going to send you the link. So they just want to know how many people are coming. It's free to go. They just need to know if you're coming or not. Hillendale neighborhood will actually have 2 meetings before the next CIC meeting, because tomorrow night is our steering committee meeting, and April 1st will be our general meeting, which is held at 7 o'clock at Living Hope Church. And again, we'll be having Chris Wadsworth in the Neighborhood Watch program and a couple of land use issues presented at that meeting. And let's see what else is going on. For PrAC, we had our goal setting session, and we're still kind of tweaking those, still looking at places to put dog parks. So if you have a particular park you do or do not want dogs in, please let me know that. Our summer concert series is going to be held at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center Park this year. There'll be lots of great parking. The stage probably won't be completed by then, but we'll have something up for the bands to perform at, and a great sound system for them. The movies in the park this year, which are held on Friday nights in August, they have an online thing from the city. There's a link you can go to vote for your choice of movies. So encourage your neighbors to go and vote, and maybe Katie, you could send us that link too. So there's like a choice of 4 different movies for each of the 4 nights. So go on there and vote for your favorite movie. The RV park master plan is pretty much complete. It's now just looking for some funding. So if anybody has any great ideas where we can get some money to put into our beautiful campground down at Clackamas Park, we'd appreciate that. The Red Oak and Filbert Run master plan it's going to be coming together soon. Tom, you'll be getting your invitation to your meeting, because I know that you're going to be on that committee. And I know a couple other people that are planning to be on the committee, and hoping to get 1 or 2 of the high school students also on that committee, because the Red Oak Park is right next door to the high school, and we're hoping that the high school construction class will come up with some great projects for that particular one. And looking forward to the May 10th bingo, fill a stocking, fill a heart. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Our next general meeting will be March 20th, and Maureen Cole will be presenting about the library bond measure that will be on the ballot in May. And we also anticipate some more discussion about the Teen Challenge siting. And just because I have to say something, I too was on the tour, and ditto as far as what everyone else said, and I felt like a little kid the whole time, and I still took me 2 days to wipe the smile off my face. So it is a treasure, it really is.
And she has pictures to prove it. Lots of pictures. I wanted to let you know, too, that we're having nominations for officers at our meeting in March, and then we'll have elections in May. And so you may see some changes in faces at that time. And also the record is still open through the Planning Commission for the conditional use permits that they're requesting for the property on Warner Parrott for the Teen Challenge. So if you have any comments, you can do it in writing, or you can come to the meeting. It's going to be open until March 10th.
Okay, we are in adjournment. Thank you, everyone.